I froze in the doorway of our suburban Denver home, watching my brother Derek hold a check up to the light like it was made of pure gold. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows, and for a moment, the check seemed to glow like it had a life of its own. Mom and Dad stood beside him on the living room couch, their faces absolutely lit up with genuine smiles, the kind of smiles I hadn't seen in months. Derek was actually celebrating. He looked genuinely proud, genuinely relieved. "The insurance company finally paid out on Brooke's policy," he announced, his voice dripping with relief and pure excitement. "We're completely out of debt. All those medical bills, the mortgage payments, the credit cards, everything. We're finally going to be okay. We're going to be free." The check was for $500,000. $500,000. The number seemed impossible. It would solve every problem our family had faced for years. I was standing right there in the doorway, alive, breathing, my heart beating, my lungs filling with air, very much not dead. Mom's eyes found me first. Her smile didn't just collapse, it shattered like glass hitting pavement. Her hand flew to her mouth. Dad's hand dropped to his side. The color drained from his face like someone had pulled a plug and let everything inside him drain away. Derek's expression went completely white as he slowly lowered the check, finally seeing what he'd just announced out loud in front of the one person in the entire world who could destroy him for it. The silence in that room was the most absolute silence I'd ever experienced. It wasn't the absence of sound. It was the sound of everything breaking at once. Trust, family, innocence, all of it shattering simultaneously. That's not possible," Derek stammered, his voice cracking like he was a teenager again. You were supposed to be dead. You fell. The coroner. The papers." I said nothing. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't confront him. I didn't demand answers. I just turned around slowly and walked back upstairs to my old bedroom, closing the door softly and carefully behind me. Behind that door, alone in the darkness, my mind was already working, already calculating, already planning exactly how I would destroy my own brother using nothing but the truth he'd tried to bury. He thought I was dead, and he was thrilled about it. He had celebrated my death for months. That was his first mistake. The second was thinking I'd ever let him get away with it. My name is Brooke. I'm 32 years old, and I've always been the peacekeeper in our family, the one who listens more than talks. I believed that family meant everything, that loyalty was sacred. 6 months ago, at Dad's birthday dinner, everything started falling apart financially. Medical bills were stacking up. Mom's heart issues, Dad's back problems. The medical letters kept arriving marked urgent and account overdue. Mom worried about losing the house. Dad was stressed about his future. I could see it eating him alive every single day. That's when Derek suggested I raise my life insurance policy. We were sitting on the back porch, and he had his arm around my shoulders. "Just in case," he'd said, his voice gentle. "For Mom and Dad's sake. If anything happened to you, they'd be taken care of. You'd be helping them." Made perfect sense. Felt like love. I named him as the sole beneficiary without hesitation. 3 months later, I went on a solo hiking trip in the Rocky Mountains. 5 days alone in nature. Exactly what I needed to clear my head and escape the weight of family expectations. On the 4th day, I got severely dehydrated. Lost my footing on a steep trail. Fell hard into a ravine, rocks cutting my skin. The wind knocked completely out of my lungs. When I finally dragged myself out 3 days later, bruised and broken and barely conscious, I stumbled back to civilization and called home from a ranger station. Derek had already reported me missing to the police. He'd filed the insurance claim with all the paperwork already prepared, like he'd been waiting for an excuse. He'd produced forged search party documents with fake signatures. He'd even convinced a retired coroner he knew personally to sign a fraudulent death certificate, marking me as deceased from injuries sustained in a fall. The insurance company paid out immediately. No questions asked. And now he was celebrating my death in our living room, holding that check like it was the answer to every prayer he'd ever whispered. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't confront him that night or the next morning. Instead, I came downstairs an hour after I'd left them in shock, like nothing was wrong, like I was just grabbing a midnight snack. Derek's face went pale again when he saw me, but I just walked past him to the kitchen, grabbed a glass of water with trembling hands, and sat at the table like I was part of the family again. "Brooke," Mom breathed, rushing to hug me, tears streaming down her face now. "Oh my God, where have you been? We thought you were dead. We had a memorial service planned." Derek said. "Got lost in the mountains," I said quietly, letting her hold me, feeling her body shake against mine. "Lost track of time. My phone died. The trails all looked the same. Sorry I scared you all so much." Derek was already rewriting the narrative, his mind spinning fast to recover from the shock. "You must have been in shock," he said too quickly, his voice too loud. "A head injury from the fall. You probably don't remember things clearly. Maybe you hit your head out there and got confused about what happened." He was trying to frame my survival as confusion, trauma, unreliability, mental instability. I looked at him and made a decision right then. I would stay silent. I would watch. I would collect every piece of evidence he had no idea I was gathering. I would let him think he'd won. And then I would destroy him with truth. That night, after everyone went to bed, I noticed the insurance paperwork still on the coffee table. Derek's signature was bold across every page. Forged documents clearly, but bold, confident, sloppy in his arrogance. That was my first piece of evidence. It wouldn't be my last. Late that night, I crept into Derek's bedroom, now his office. His laptop was open. The password was unchanged from high school. Derek the Great 2015. My hands shook as I opened his email. There were dozens of messages to the insurance adjuster, detailed lies about finding my personal effects near a cliff. There were photoshopped images of my jacket on rocks with timestamps that didn't match. Bank statements showing he'd arranged to move money before the claim paid out. He'd planned this. This was premeditated. I photographed every screen with a burner phone. My breathing steadied. This wasn't anger. This was clarity. Downstairs, I heard his voice on the phone. "She's back. We need to fix this." I closed the laptop and went to bed. Breakfast the next morning was tense. Mom asked gentle questions about where I'd been, what I'd experienced. Derek took over the conversation like he'd rehearsed it. "You were gone so long," he said, his voice full of false concern. "We thought the worst. Maybe you hit your head out there. You're not thinking clearly, are you?" He suggested I see a doctor for post-traumatic stress. I nodded slowly, playing along. "Maybe you're right," I said softly. His shoulders relaxed. I pulled out my phone and set it to record. Hidden. Every time Derek mentioned my confusion or memory loss, it was another nail in his coffin. By afternoon, he'd convinced them I needed professional help. Perfect. Let him dig deeper into his own hole. 3 days later, I drove to a park on the opposite side of Denver and found an old payphone at a gas station. I'd seen them in the movies. Didn't know if they still existed. But there it was, waiting like a relic from another era. My hands were steady as I dialed. I called the insurance company's fraud department and asked for a supervisor. "This is Brooke Thompson," I said clearly, my voice calm and professional. "My life insurance policy was claimed fraudulently by my brother. I'm calling to report it. I'm alive. I was never dead. The death certificate is forged." The agent on the other end went completely silent. "Ma'am, we have a death certificate signed by your brother and a coroner's report. We've already paid out $500,000 to your family." "I know," I said. "Check the signatures. Check the coroner's credentials. Check the dates. Everything is forged. And I can prove it." They sent me copies within hours via email to a new account I'd created. Fake signatures. A coroner's stamp from a doctor who'd been retired and living in Arizona for 5 years. Timestamp documentation that didn't match reality. Everything I needed. I saved everything to an encrypted drive that I hid in a book on my shelf, a copy of Gone Girl, that felt appropriately ironic for what was about to happen. I was in the garage sorting through old camping gear when Mom found me. She hesitated before speaking, her voice barely above a whisper, like she was afraid Derek might hear us. Derek told us that you abandoned us on purpose. He said you hated the family. He said you wanted to get away from us and prove you could survive on your own without any of us. I didn't deny it. I didn't confirm it. I just squeezed her hand gently and said, I survived, Mom. That's what matters. I'm here. I'm alive. She nodded slowly, but I could see the doubt forming behind her eyes. Small seed. A question she wasn't asking out loud but was definitely thinking. That night, I overheard her confront Derek in the kitchen. How did you get the money so fast? The claim should have taken months to process. Insurance companies don't usually pay out that quickly without investigations. Because I handled everything while she was gone, Derek snapped back, his voice angry that she was questioning him. Because I'm the one who actually does things around here. I'm the one who takes responsibility. Mom went quiet. That silence was louder than any argument could ever be. I stayed in the hallway, out of sight, listening to the foundation of his credibility crack. I accessed Dad's online banking account using a password he'd written down and never changed. I found the account statement within seconds. Derek had deposited the $500,000 into the joint family account. Then, 3 days after the payout, he transferred $200,000 to a personal account linked to an offshore bank in the Caymans. Not just a regular bank account, an offshore account. This wasn't desperation. This was money laundering. I screenshot everything. Timestamps, count numbers, the complete trail of greed. That night, Derek announced he was planning a family vacation. His treat. Mom smiled weakly. Dad looked uneasy. I said nothing, just watched him bask in the false victory. Every boast was another piece of the trap closing around him. I tracked down the 2 college buddies Derek had hired to fake the search party. One of them was easy to find, still posting on social media from the same dive bar he'd been going to for a decade. I watched his posts for days, learning his schedule, understanding his patterns. I went there alone one night, dressed differently, hair different, makeup different. I sat near him at the bar and waited for the right moment. When he was drunk enough, he started bragging to his friends about easy money he'd made. Derek paid us cash, he slurred, his words slurring together. Said his sister disappeared. He wanted us to say we found her stuff near a drop-off. We just went out, posed with some of her gear he gave us, took pictures. Easy $5,000 each. I recorded the entire confession on my phone, voice disguised with an app filter. He never knew it was me. He never saw my face clearly. He had no idea what he was confessing to the one person who mattered. I left the bar with the recording and drove home with my hands steady on the wheel. Dad needed surgery soon. Back surgery that his insurance wouldn't fully cover. It was necessary. It was expensive. Derek volunteered to cover it with insurance money, acting like a hero, acting like he was being generous with money that wasn't even his. Dad actually stopped him mid-sentence. That money was Brooke's, he said quietly. His voice filled with something I'd never heard before, cold clarity. She's alive. That insurance policy was meant to protect her future, not to become a slush fund for your vacations. Derek laughed it off. Technically it's ours now according to the policy rules. I watched from the doorway as Dad's face hardened into something I barely recognized. His own son had just revealed that he valued policy technicalities over the fact that his daughter survived a ravine fall. That he valued stolen money over his daughter's life. Later, Dad pulled me aside in private. Something's not right, honey, he said quietly. Something's been wrong with him since you came home. I can feel it. I nodded once. I know. He squeezed my arm, the first real support I'd felt from anyone in days. That single touch meant everything. Meant he believed me. It meant he was starting to see through Derek's lies. Derek noticed the shift immediately. He grew agitated, paranoid, started checking his phone constantly. But let him sweat. I met with a fraud attorney in a small downtown office. Cash payment. No paper trail. No records of our meeting. She reviewed everything I'd gathered. The forged death certificate, the premature payout, the offshore transfer, the bar buddy confession with his voice captured on recording, the email evidence with timestamps, the screenshots of bank transfers. She took off her glasses and looked at me directly. "This is textbook insurance fraud with aggravating circumstances," she said. "Premeditation. Wire fraud. Identity theft. Interstate wire fraud because of the Cayman's account. We can file a civil suit immediately, and that will automatically trigger a criminal investigation from the FBI. Can we wait?" "Yes. I need to gather one more thing. I need him to incriminate himself further." She agreed. "Just don't wait too long. Every day he's not in custody is a day he could disappear or destroy more evidence." At home, Derek was checking his phone constantly, refreshing his email over and over. His leg bounced when he sat down, a nervous habit I'd never seen before. He asked why I'd been distant lately. I smiled faintly and said, "Just thinking about things." He laughed nervously. "Like what?" "Like a lot," I said. "Nothing else. Just that." Over dinner I casually mentioned, "Oh, the insurance company called today. They're reviewing the claim. Someone filed a fraud report against it." Derek's fork froze halfway to his mouth. His eyes went wide. "Who would do that?" he asked too quickly, his voice tight and strained. "Anonymous tip," I shrugged. "I guess somebody thought something was off about the claim." Mom looked between us, watching Derek's reaction carefully. Dad stayed silent but watched with sharp, intelligent eyes. Derek forced a laugh that sounded like a car engine failing to start. "Probably just a scam. People try that all the time. It's nothing." But his hand trembled. The fork clattered slightly against his plate. And later I heard him on the phone in his room. "We might have a problem. Serious problem. They're investigating." The fear was spreading. The trap was tightening. The walls were closing in. I bought a nanny cam disguised as a smoke detector from an online retailer using a gift card purchased with cash. I installed it in the living room corner, camouflaged perfectly among the other smoke detectors. That night, Derek paced alone in the living room, talking to himself like he was rehearsing testimony for a trial. "If she pushes this, I'll say she's unstable," he muttered to himself, his hand running through his hair. "Post-traumatic stress from the fall. She's confused about what happened. She's making things up. I was just protecting the family. Protecting Mom and Dad." He deleted old emails frantically, searching his sent folder, hunting for evidence, not knowing the camera was capturing every moment. The next morning he was overly nice, making coffee with an exaggerated smile, offering to help with chores, being aggressively pleasant. I accepted the coffee and watched him closely. His hands shook as he poured. Mom asked why he was so jumpy and nervous. He blamed work stress. Dad rolled his eyes and turned away, done with his lies. The family dynamic was tilting visibly. And Derek could feel the ground shifting beneath him, could feel his world changing. I downloaded the footage to an encrypted cloud drive that night, then deleted it from the camera's storage. I called a family meeting for Saturday evening. Everyone sat uneasily around the dining room table. Derek's leg bounced. Mom looked nervous. Dad was calm but alert, like he already knew what was coming. I started slowly, my voice steady. "I've learned some things about the insurance claim. Things Derek didn't want me to know. Things that are going to change everything." "Brooke, you're confused," Derek started, his voice tight. I raised my hand. "Let me finish." I placed printed bank statements on the table. His transfers to the Caymans highlighted in yellow. Derek's face went white. "Silence." Gasp. Dad's jaw tightened with anger. Derek stammered something about safekeeping and investment purposes. Then I played the audio of his bar buddy confessing. his drunk voice bragging about the fake search party. Derek's face drained completely of color. "This isn't what it looks like," he whispered, barely audible. But it was exactly what it looked like. Derek suddenly bolted from the table and ran upstairs. We heard drawers slamming, papers being thrown. Moments later he came back down, holding a USB drive like it was a weapon. "I have proof Brooke planned this," he shouted, desperation in his voice. "She faked her own death for attention and money." He plugged it in, played a doctored audio clip of my voice saying, "I might disappear for a while." It was from 6 years ago. Edited. Completely out of context. From a conversation I'd had with a friend about taking a solo trip. Mom frowned immediately. "That's not recent, Derek." "Check the metadata," I said calmly. Derek went pale. He clicked on the file properties. The creation date was yesterday. His forgery attempt was transparent. Obvious. Desperately obvious. Dad stood up slowly. "Enough," he said, his voice final and absolute. For the first time, Derek looked truly afraid. Like he understood that he'd lost. I revealed the next layer of evidence. Detailed screenshots showing the $200,000 transfer to a Cayman's account linked directly to Derek's name with his social security number. "This money was transferred before I came home," I said quietly, my voice calm. 3 days after the payout. Derek moved it while the family was supposedly grieving my death. Mom covered her mouth with her hand. Dad's face hardened. Derek shouted, "That's for investment purposes. That's legitimate business." I showed time-stamped emails where he bragged to a friend about free money, and finally having a break, and my dead sister coming through for me. His alibi collapsed completely. Dad asked one simple question. "Why, Derek? Why would you do this to your own sister?" Derek had no answer. For the first time, he had absolutely nothing to say. No excuse. No lie. Nothing. Mom's eyes filled with tears, not for him but for the family he'd broken. Mom stood up, her voice shaking with emotion. "You told us Brooke abandoned us. You said she hated the family. You made us believe she chose to disappear." She turned to face Derek directly, her eyes filled with disappointment. "You lied to our faces." "Mom, I can explain." Derek started, reaching for her. "I believed you because you're my son," she continued, cutting him off, her voice breaking. "And you used that. You used our trust. You used our love for you." Silence stretched across the room like a held breath, like the entire world was waiting. Then she looked at me. "Brooke, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I believed him instead of you." I nodded once. No anger. Just acknowledgement. Understanding. Derek slumped into his chair, defeated. No quick excuse. No clever reframing. Just silence and the weight of what he'd done. The person he'd hurt most wasn't me. It was Mom. And he finally understood it. I anonymously submitted the full evidence packet to the Colorado Insurance Fraud Hotline. Forged documents, recordings, bank records, metadata, the bar confession, everything. Within hours, an investigator named Detective Sarah Chen contacted me privately. "We're opening a case," she said. "This is clearly premeditated fraud. Multiple felonies. Identity theft. Wire fraud. The penalties are very severe." I asked her to wait for my signal before making any arrests. At home, Derek's phone rang constantly. Unknown numbers. Calls from investigators. He ignored them all, sweating through his shirt, his face gray. Mom watched him like he was a stranger she'd never known. Dad refused to speak to him at all. His world was shrinking in real time, visibly collapsing. I kept silent, letting the official machinery turn. Every unanswered call tightened the invisible rope around his neck. Every ringtone made him flinch. He still didn't know how close the end really was. Derek tried one final play. He told Mom and Dad that I was blackmailing him for money. "She wants it all back," he claimed, his voice desperate. "She threatened to go to the police and ruin me if I didn't give her everything." Mom looked exhausted. "Stop lying, Derek. Just stop. Please." He turned to me, eyes wild and pleading. Tell them you're making this up, Brooke. Tell them you're blackmailing me. Make a deal with me. Please. I met his gaze calmly. I don't need to say anything. The truth is already speaking for itself. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled in their frames. Later that night, I found him crying in his car in the driveway. His shoulders shook. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles were white and bloodless. Felt no pity. Only clarity. Only closure approaching. His tears were 6 months too late. The investigator texted me. We have enough for a warrant. Give the word. I replied. Soon. Wait for my signal. Mom stopped cooking Derek's favorite meals. She cooked for me and Dad, but nothing for him. Dad moved his chair away from him at dinner, creating physical distance that said everything words couldn't. The message was clear. You don't belong here anymore. I stayed neutral, speaking only when spoken to directly, neither helping him nor condemning him. Pure distance. Derek tried small apologies. I was desperate. I made a mistake. I didn't know what I was doing. No one responded. The silence was punishment more severe than any argument could ever be. He grew increasingly frantic, packing bags, throwing clothes into a suitcase. I'll leave if that's what you want. I'll just go. I can't stand being looked at like this. I can't stand the silence. Mom said quietly. You already left us when you cashed that check. When you reported your sister dead. When you moved that money to the Caymans. You left us a long time ago. Derek froze. For the first time, he realized the money wasn't the only thing he'd lost. He'd lost his family. That night, he sat alone on the front porch in the cold. No one joined him. No one checked on him. No one spoke his name. The isolation was complete and absolute. 2 detectives arrived at dawn on a Tuesday. Derek opened the door still in his pajamas, confused and bleary with sleep. They showed the warrant and read him his rights in formal voices. Mom and Dad watched from the hallway in silence, their faces sad but resolute. I stood back, completely calm, watching the man who'd tried to profit from my death face the consequences of his own choices. They cuffed him in front of the family he'd tried to manipulate. The metal clicked audibly. His neighbors peeked through their curtains, watching the arrest unfold. He looked at me, pleading, Brooke, tell them it's a mistake. Please tell them it's a mistake. I met his eyes directly. It's not. He was led outside to the patrol car. The front door closed behind him. The house felt lighter immediately. At the station, Derek confessed everything, hoping for leniency, hoping a guilty plea would soften the prosecutor's approach. But the recorded bar confession, the metadata on his fake audio file, the emails proving premeditation, the offshore transfers, they all proved this wasn't a desperate mistake. It was calculated, planned, cold and deliberate. The prosecutor added identity theft and wire fraud to the charges. Maximum sentence: 15 years in federal prison. Derek begged for a deal. They refused. Back home, Mom asked me one question. Did you plan all of this, Brooke? From the very beginning? I shook my head. I just collected the truth. I didn't plan anything. I just paid attention to what he was doing. I just documented it. I let the truth speak for itself. She hugged me then, long and tight. I'm so proud of you, she whispered into my hair. Dad nodded once, quiet pride in his eyes. The money was frozen. Most of it would be returned to the insurance company and our family. Derek's arrogance had built his own prison, brick by brick. The courtroom was cold and quiet. Derek stood in orange clothing, his head bowed, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. Like the case had drained something essential from him. The judge read the charges. Evidence played on screens. His boasts, his forgeries, his transfers. His deleted emails recovered by investigators. The audio confessions. Mom and Dad sat directly behind me, silent support, their presence like a shield. I testified calmly and clearly. No emotion, just facts. What I'd witnessed. What I'd discovered. How I'd gathered the evidence. My voice never wavered. Derek tried one last lie, claiming he'd been coerced somehow, claiming he was unstable. The judge cut him off mid-sentence. The evidence is overwhelming. Sentence: 12 years in federal prison, full restitution ordered. He was led away. No dramatic outburst. Just quiet defeat. Outside the courthouse, reporters asked questions. I declined comment. Mom squeezed my hand. "It's over," she whispered. Dad added, "You brought us back together, Brooke. You made us face the truth." He nodded. The family he'd tried to destroy stood stronger, because of his fall. Weeks later, the returned insurance funds paid for Dad's surgery. He recovered quickly, stronger than before. The surgery was successful. The pain that had haunted him for years was finally gone. Mom started therapy for all of us together. We learned how to talk openly again, how to trust again, how to heal. I moved into my own apartment nearby, but Sunday dinners continued. The table was full. No empty chairs, no lingering guilt, no ghosts. We laughed again, carefully at first, then genuinely. Real laughter. Real joy. Derek wrote letters from prison, begging for forgiveness. Mom read one, sat with it for a moment, then burned it in the kitchen sink. "Some things can't be undone," she said, watching the ashes float away. I agreed completely. Revenge wasn't about punishment. It was about truth. The family healed not despite the betrayal, but by facing it directly, honestly, together. Belonging was earned again, through truth and time and the courage to face what had been broken. I slept soundly for the first time in months. I walk the same mountain trail now, alone but not lost. The view is clear. The path is solid beneath my feet. I'm not afraid anymore. Back home the house feels whole. Mom smiles when I visit. Dad jokes again about old times. Derek's name rarely comes up in conversation. When it does, it's spoken in past tense. Carefully, respectfully of what we've all survived. I keep the evidence drive locked away in that book. Gone Girl, on my shelf. Not for revenge anymore. As a reminder, silence can protect. Truth can rebuild. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply pay attention. I'm not the same Brooke I was a year ago. Stronger, calmer, healed, changed by what I survived, not by what happened to me but by how I chose to respond. The life insurance policy. Cancelled it. No one needs to profit from my death again. I'm alive. My family is alive. Dad's healthy. Mom's healing. We're all moving forward together. And that's enough. That's everything.